Let's do this. I'm looking forward for this. Hi, James. And I love your story because, like, let's be straight to the chase. I saw some pictures of you on a wheelchair. So at some stage, you have a early diagnosis that impact your life from young age. Tell me a little bit about that, please.
You're referring to the picture that's behind me then, Nuno?
Yeah, also, yeah.
Just so people are on the same page as you and I, obviously the picture behind me as we're recording in video is it's not that recent a picture. I'm trying to think how old it is because I've actually got blonde hair in that picture. I haven't had blonde hair for a long time. It's I think about 10 years ago. So I've been playing the sport of wheelchair basketball nearly 11 or 12 years since I retired from international sport. So as I've alluded to your question, Nuno, I was born with my disability, so I don't have let's see if I get this right. I get it wrong sometimes. I'm missing my femur, so the top half of my leg, so the big bone in the leg,
Yep.
and the top half of the thigh. I've got a small fibula and tibia, so the bottom half, and that is attached to my hip bone. So what I try and paint a picture for people it's similar to say an amputation, obviously, but I haven't lost mine due to diabetes, an accident. Gosh, and the list is endless in terms of so for me, the wheelchair is almost an aid to do a sport now. Whereas when I do speak to other disability individuals that can walk, that is a massive. I'm pointing with the wrong finger, but that is a massive thing mentally. That's a blockage and it's a barrier and I can relate because I spent one day in a hospital wheelchair, and those are built like tanks. That's kind of their negative attachment to it. So for me, I think the mindset I've got out to probably my mother, my aunt, and my grandmother of kind of being strong-willed as, hey, James is disabled, so what? And I've almost instilled that to my core beliefs as, hey, I didn't even embrace for a long period of time, adversity to what it is. And I think when I've come to terms with it as I've grown older, as, hey, you've got to embrace the good and the bad. If other people
Yep.
view your story as adverse, that is what it is. But because I've lived it day in, day out, for me, there's going to be good and there's going to be bad. Hey, if I view it as adverse, okay, there are bad days that are worse that I probably don't acknowledge in what is social media because I just get on with it as, hey, that's a bad day. For whatever reason, I may not be able to wear the leg. Okay, I might have to resort to a wheelchair or the crutches, but I make do and I go about my day as if nothing's changed because obviously that is the rock bottom. It can't get any worse than that. And obviously
Yep.
the bet is obviously looking at it through a perspective of maybe mindfulness as, hey, my life is not any worse or any better than anybody else. It's how I look at it from a perspective, and that's it. So it's neither good, neither bad. But if I can embrace the good and the bad, which I think more people need to do, because I think most people
Yes.
want to fixate on, oh, I want to be happy all the time. Yeah, but that's you working against the other side of it. As I don't think anybody in their right mind wants to be unhappy, but those things are going to occur regardless. So I think as probably has transpired more so maybe say the last 3 to 5 years, kind of going, well, you need to embrace the unpleasant emotions and feelings because that's what we're going to happen most of the time. And then if I can analyze when things go right, I can replicate them as, okay, the choice if I want to stay miserable or if I want to kind of go, what's going to bring me joy? Talking to other people, maybe watching some comedies, and my mood will change in an instant.
Yep. I think you're right. Like a culture of personal development. And one of the things is need of happiness 100% all the time. Being that because of that, when you are not happy, the person that see the post and see all these pictures, beautiful pictures in Instagram, and people just shouting, happiness, happiness. When they are not okay, they kind of feel, that something is wrong. They
Mhm.
don't realize that what they see in social media is just a part of this person, the pleasant part they want to show. Like, I think it's like the heart machine, there is up and downs. I had a client once that she was like, Oh, I really like my life. My life is always like a line, and it's like, well, probably you are there. You know, when you see art machine that
Yeah,
is,
but that's not with a harm machine like that, that's you dead. So, I think and you got me thinking, Nuno, about football, right? In a match, there's the highs
yeah,
and the lows of football. I think people view sport in a negative way sometimes, but whereas I think football is probably the epitome of it, and I'm not bashing any other sports for this, but I think this is probably a good example to showcase self-development. The highs is the goal celebration. Yeah.
mm,
But people in their ordinary life don't do that when they have a win. Oh, it's no big deal. But then when you have
no,
a
there
bad
was,
spot, it's not. It doesn't. Whereas in a game of we'll say to the Americans of soccer, there is going to be more low points. There's going to be more messes than there's going to be high points. I'm a Manchester United supporter, so I've gone through a lot of highs in my lifetime, which is obviously unusual that they've won loads of trophies up until when was the dry spell? Probably about 7 years ago. And then people are like, well, but the good times are gonna stay. It's like, no, no, no. Sport is like this, it cycles. So Liverpool were
yeah,
good in the 80s. Manchester United had the 90s. I hate to say this, but as in the cross city rivals in Manchester City might have the next decade. I don't know.
yeah,
That might change as well with where Manchester United is at with their ownership. And
yeah,
it's probably
yeah.
similar in Portugal as well with Porto, Sporting Lisbon,
I
and
think I think you're totally right. I think is a thing like you are. There's an expression: you are only as good as the last game. You know, and I see loads of sports people that they think they will have all these wins forever, and they don't prepare the life. And when the fame and everything is gone, and there is this crisis of identity because they suddenly stop to do what they did all their life. They like they got reach the bottom. But another thing is that most people these days are so afraid of going outside of their comfort zone. They not even have this feeling of trying for a win, you know, just they get on the couch, keyboard warriors. But one thing that I saw is that you went to be also a Paralympic athlete. How did that happen? That's a really high thing. So
I can't put into words in terms of how obviously in disabled sport that's the pinnacle, it's the top. So if we go back 20 years to I went to one training session as normal after school, and one day one of the coaches approached me, what's your thoughts on doing disability sport? But because I've been brought up on respect and listening to other people have to say, it's like I took on board the information, but I'm kind of going, well, why would I do that? Within reason, I can compete to some degree, and you can see from my social expression, I know that I obviously was disabled, and I'm going to be at a disadvantage to some extent, even in a swimming pool.
yeah,
But I could compete with people of similar ability, regardless if they had all their limbs or not. So for me, a definite knock to the ego, as how I'll put it now from a coaching perspective, because it's like, why am I gonna do something that we are talking about 20 years ago? The Paralympic movement wasn't what it is today. As in the UK, it got at best maybe 4 hours coverage for something that lasts 2 weeks.
yeah,
To obviously, I was very, I don't want to use the word lucky or fortunate. I had the massive privilege of competing at London 2012. Like it was a massive gulf in what happened in just 12 years to obviously what's probably going to go over in the future. So for me, it was probably accepting the coach as, hey, I didn't look at it as good or bad at the time. It's only on reflection during the lockdowns and the pandemic. I've kind of gone, well, what was their agenda as to why they've kind of steered me in one direction? As I still competed in that league and did fairly well, but we obviously discussed this before we came on to record. I went to the training session in the summer to that team in the Belgian Disabled League, and their team management just lit up. And so I give people some perspective, of the three best swimmers in that team, three of us all went to the Paralympics. So I obviously didn't do it as a swimmer. One of the guys is still competing to this day. He was a little bit younger than us. He's gone into wheelchair tennis and has become a medalist. And then there was one swimmer who obviously competed in Athens in 2004 as a swimmer. So they had one particular time probably the strongest relay team in the country because we had three of the good swimmers, and most of the teams dotted around Belgium only had like one or two. So we had a little bit more chances of so my success and rise to fame was like immediate, getting gold medals, winning titles in year one. So that was kind of, oh, I like this. What's the next rung on the ladder? To This is before social media and all that. My mom picked up the phone and found a phone number for British Swimming, and the performance director rang her back. That's pretty much unheard of. And the gentleman in question now is the head person within Paralympics GP. So he's like the most important person as chairperson within disabled sport in this country. So he probably very, very proud to see that I was able to materialize some of that raw talent I had as a swimmer and materialized it in swimming and then later into volleyball. So for me, Nuno, if I was being honest with you and being honest with your audience, did I think that I would be sitting here today and talk about going to 2 Paralympics? Probably not. I would have
No.
probably bitten your hand off to do one. But obviously success breeds success. That once I'd done the first games out in China in Beijing in 2008, there was a somber moment as, hey, this 2-week festival is finished. I want more of this. So
Yeah.
London was literally, I did have probably an argument with family as they wanted me to go into media and go and do work for Channel 4. That was obviously the broadcasting company that does it in this country. I went, I don't want to be on
No.
the outside looking in. I want to be on the inside looking out. So we probably still have this argument to this day as, oh, maybe if you'd have gone and done the media work sooner, you might have think doors might have opened differently. Whereas, well, we'll never know because obviously I made the choice that I wanted to do. And they've accepted that to some degree that, hey, would you change some things? Maybe I've done some media training would have helped to do, from a hosting perspective for a podcast to be a little bit more polished, to be a bit more precise with answering questions. Sure, that would help, obviously, but I've developed that skill over that thing beyond that. So that's probably the long-winded answer to
Yeah.
your question, Nuno, of how did I
So,
get to the Paralympics?
but from that, like, and and sometimes you see that like actually in actors that saying, "Oh, maybe I should say yes to that movie." Like Titanic. The other day, I was listening to someone that should be doing, and you never know because at that time, like you just decide what you decide with the things at that time,
Hmm.
and you never know. You could like you. I have actually some personal failures, and that's why I end up in Ireland. If I was being successful, I will not go to that part. But to be honest, today I actually prefer to be failed on the things that brought me to the possibility to go to Dublin. But I think it's an interest point is that relationship and someone that asks you to go to do something that you actually in the beginning you are kind of second out. What was your biggest insight of that moment?
From the self, do you mean, Nuno?
Yes, the challenge of you go to because as you mentioned, like the Paralympics, was not something that
I
was
think it's
crossing
the
your
amount
mind.
of faith and belief people had in me as this untapped to kind of go, well, if we, I'm going to use like a diamond to show my example, as in we can mold the pristine diamond that people see on a wedding ring in jewelry. Once upon a time was an ugly looking rock. So the belief and the faith that my performance director at Disability Sport, Anthony Hughes, had, obviously he's no longer with us, to my very first coach in swimming in this country, Billy Pye. They all had an enormous amount of belief that, hey, if we can untap this gem that James is, he's going to go places. So I think when I believed it for myself, Nuno, was when I was in the Paralympic Village in Beijing.
Mm.
I bumped into Billy haphazardly in China, in the village, and and the words that stuck to me before I competed at that games is, "You've now fulfilled the potential you had in swimming." I went, "Yeah, now it's now time to go." And I think up until that point, I probably was faking it till I made it. because moving from swimming to rowing, I was an athlete. Once I moved into rowing, I'd done my first World Champs in 2006, my second in 2007, to obviously my first Paralympics in 2008. It was kind of, wow, I don't know any different. Our Olympic program has got so much prestige on it as, hey, I must have to deliver it that kind. I laugh about it. I'm being real
Yeah.
now, a little bit of being almost, well, I want some of that success for myself. And it probably didn't dawn on me until, and I don't remember when it was. It probably a couple of days before I was going to compete on day one. I went, yeah, I belong. I belong now, and
Yeah.
I believed it. Probably up
Yeah.
until that point, it was probably going not necessarily through the motions, but I didn't really, really believe in the talent that I had.
I actually I tell that to often to many people, and I told actually once to someone that and I never spoke, and I will not go in detail because of confidential. But I said to a world champion, it was not more a world champion. It's like you are only a 50% of your potential. And one of the things, even me, I think I'm just 50%. I'm just, at the moment. But I kind of realizing that a thing is we often are missing in life is actually like you had in coaches and most likely family that they saw, behind the potential of the things you believe. They went higher and they saw everything that you could not see. I often, and you are a coach also, I speak with in some clients and it's like, what you are talking about? And often, sometimes 1 year, 2 years after, they say, now I know what you're talking about. Because until then, when I say you can do this, these, and they're working with me, I could see that raw potential on that diamond. It's like the diamond is there. It just needs to be,
Shape.
shaped on what is already there. And then they kind of realize, "Oh, you're right. Like I'm just low standing, playing just, the nice, the easy game instead of going full in, full out. And that gives you, I think most of people just pass through life like almost zombies. But tell me a little bit how all this experience in life, I'm guessing that there was also moments that from school, working, that you are against the odds. What were the most important figures in your life that help you go through this?
I'd have to say my mother, very, very strong, strong woman. Because you mentioned schooling. I did most of my schooling from kindergarten all the way up until, did I leave the Belgian school? About 15 in the Belgian system. And it came a point when I was in about year 8, so about 13, 14. I wasn't doing very well academically. I was, this is embarrassing to say, but I'll admit it. I I'd failed, gosh, about 5, 6, 7 subjects in that year, even including English, which is a very embarrassing thing to admit as an English speaker. But what I did, and I'd probably have to thank my mother for this to give me that kind of strong will. I went to the principal of the school to kind of go,
Mhm.
you need to give me a second chance here. And obviously, I think everybody else that had to redo the year, they kind of admitted defeat. I think as a 13-year-old to be that, I won't say, I would say fearless, to confront an adult and say, hey, I know I failed here. Hey, give me a second chance and I'll prove you right. And obviously, he did. He probably did it and kind of went, gosh, James has got some balls here to do this. And obviously, the following year, I repeated the year and I only had to redo one exam. And that was my French exam. And my teacher had me go away, do the exact same thing I had done the year before. He said, hey, you need to write, I think it's 5 to 10 essays from a newspaper on articles that you liked. So I think a lot, the ones that stick to mind were like around about the Tour de France. And obviously in the second year, I thought I'd have to go in the classroom and then he'd dictate it back to me. He asked me on that second year, James, how many exams you had to reset? One, sir. Hey, James, you go and enjoy your summer vacation. That's enough. And obviously, I owe a lot of respect to that teacher because, in theory, he should have had to sit an exam to
Yep.
pass. But he went, you've done your work. You've done what you were told to set out with. Because obviously, I wrote about things that I want to would be interested to read about, because there's no, and I know probably people do this, that they go through the motions and they do the bare minimum. And obviously that's when things go particularly wrong, because you're focusing on things that don't bring you joy, don't bring you passion. Whereas, hey, if you're telling me I got to write 5 to 6 articles, I better be somewhat interested to know about. And
Yeah.
I probably enjoyed the Tour de France more, I think, maybe in the last 5 years, because it's a bit more exciting to, well, obviously British athletes have been dominant, so that probably helps. But as in we've done pretty well more recently, and what my mum didn't want to go through was having that ordeal of, hey, you might have passed year 8, but I don't want you to have to do it year 9, year 10, year 11, 12, because I can't bear the stress. So she took it upon herself that, hey, this is a bonus of being on a military installation. There's multitude of schools. She went, I'm going to take you out of this system and I'm going to put you in the American system. I was like, I don't want to do that. I was very resistant. I was like, why do I don't want to do that. I don't know anybody. This is utter lie. This is not true though. As in, the schools were like back to each other, that all the kids knew each other. It was because I didn't want to be put outside my comfort zone of what I've known
Yeah.
since I was 3 years old. This is going to be a bit more difficult because now everything's in English. And I think once I got over that, not even an ego thing, it's just wanting to be not in control. I reveled in that system, because the American system where I went to school, it was at the time one of the better, if not the best, Department of Defense school in the world, because there was international students from all the NATO countries, so it helped to bring the grades up. If you wanted to do extra work, you got credited it. So the Americans don't understand this, but if you could get 110% in subjects, obviously in the real world, 110% doesn't exist. It's not possible.
Yep.
But for me, it was like, oh, you're wonderful. And if you're willing to do more, go beyond what you think you're capable of, you're going to get rewarded. If I do extra
So
work, I'm going to get credit for it. So it evens out. So say you had 90% across the board, you do extra work, there's 100 more. I'm now an A student across the board. So for me, that massively made an impact at that time that I was climbing the ladder in sport. It was like a reinforcement. I'm confident in this domain. Now I can be confident in my academic ability. My mother and father obviously don't like that I didn't do as well as I could have. I kind of went, no, I'm going to put all my eggs over here. It's not a regret I've got in later life, but I agree with them now. I could have obviously pushed the limits and the boundaries of what I think I was capable intellectually.
we need to thank your mother and your coach to push you more than you think you can do. And I'm guessing that comes to the other thing, that you are also a performance coach. So you most likely you will do that for your clients, that they
Yeah,
push
I
through
like
their own
push.
limitation. How did you come up with coming to a personal coach, or what you were going to say?
I think for me, it's been a journey. It's been an evolution in me, because I started out as a personal trainer nearly a decade ago, and I was resistant to that a long time ago, because my mother, she's like, "Oh, you make a good coach." No, I'm not ready. I wouldn't back then, because I was very
Yeah.
much, it was my way. I wouldn't take on board. I still say there are excuses for some people, because it's like, well, why are you creating a barrier when there doesn't need to be a barrier? Just let's admit that you have a fear, which is nothing to be embarrassed about, because you wouldn't be a human being if you weren't scared of something. So for me, it's obviously going from being a personal trainer to then going online to then becoming a transformational coach to what we are now, to performance coach, because what I wanted to embrace was what people applaud me for, as like what I'd done in the past. Okay, well, let me try and not recreate for other people, but let me chip away myself in the past to find where bits that would be useful for other individuals. So what I've done, I think more of lately, is kind of work with people to kind of go, okay, this thing that you are inherently thinking, what is it that's the problem? So for one particular, I won't go into the person's story, but he was premonition and outputting these thoughts of, people are going to judge me.
Yeah.
I've experienced that 20 years ago. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, what is it that you think is going to be the problem? So I went to him, there's a risk, there's a reward and a benefit. If you do the benefit and the reward, for you in particular, they far outweigh. It's not even a 1-to-1. It's like, we'll say that 100 to, if not 1,000 to 1. So for me, if we can work through that, I'm not dismissing that those thoughts exist, because ultimately there's some bad people in this world that are going to be judgmental. I was one of those people before I got into coaching, because that's why I said it to my mother, I wasn't ready, because when I was in health and fitness, I would view people as, hey, you're fat, you're just lazy, which is not
Mhm.
fair on the other individual. Whereas as I've got better at my job in coaching, kind of go, okay, everybody's got to a certain point in their journey through different things. Let me have a better understanding and have empathy as how you've got there, and let's work through that together to give you tools, resources to be able to be, when adversity presents itself in the future, because it is going to present itself in the future, that you're prepared.
Yeah, I think you mentioned actually one important thing. The experience I have in coaching is the reason that most people hold to things is the fear of judgment. It's thinking that they are not good enough, and because of that, the voice they have actually is a recreation of the story from everything they learned to that point, and they then use that story to keep them on a safety zone instead of going live their hero journey. We just
Mm.
worry to put to other persons that most of them they are not even thinking about us 100%. No one is thinking about us most of the time, but we think they are. So we hold us like from everything that you learn like in your journey from school, facing all the tribulations and the success. What will be the main advice that you give to someone that they're facing significant obstacles and doubting of their own abilities? What you'll help them, what you tell them based in your own experience?
I think Nuno is facing that fear in the present, because I've done this through, I've done the latter, and push things under the carpet, and when it's come to fruition to actually deal with it, it's like just this wave that's unsurmountable, and it's like, if only I'd have done things differently and dealt with them in the present when they may be, well, not as big. So what I have people do now in coaching is kind of going, well, let's come up together with resolutions. As if you can you can tell me solution as how you would overcome certain things. I'm not going to say they're wrong or they're right, but as in, hey, if you had to prioritize those in accordance to what
Mhm.
is the most principal thing that you need to do not right now, okay, that's what you need to do. That's an action. So I think what a lot of people apprehensive of is that ability to action something as, oh, it's going to be judged, it's not going to be good enough. Ultimately, how will you know if you don't do it? So the slogan that I like the most is obviously Nike's just do it, but I looked at the meaning behind it. So I've watched a video on social media, and it's literally for those people that are just going out and trying it. It's not for the elite guys and girls that are sponsored by them. It's just for that ordinary person in the street that's just getting into running. I thought that's amazing. So you're supporting everybody that's just trying to, in fact, better their life. So what have you got to do in order to do that? Is just action something. What, and just review it. Okay, this didn't go well. Why? What necessary? Because ultimately, you and I, Nuno, are going to agree with this. Is the hardest critic is oneself,
Yep.
because there's the which is we're going into territory that is perfectionism, which is ultimately is massive undoing of people's mental ability to do anything. Because ultimately, if my expectation up here and I'm a beginner, there's no way I'm going to be 100%. But if I'm able to reframe it, so I get a lot of clients to reframe, their perspective on, how they're talking to themselves, how they think, as, hey, how can we turn this supposedly negative event circumstance that you've got into a positive? Let me try and find a win out of all these losses. And ultimately, this is a good one I seen on social media not too long ago. 2 L's form a W. And I went,
Mhm.
yeah, wow. But you would never
Yeah.
think to take 2 L's, because of ultimately where I think people's beliefs have got skewed is they inherently view failure is the epitome of me. And I've experienced that obviously with schooling because I had a teacher who there would amount to nothing. To literally I did everything to adopt that way of thinking because okay, no, I'm not doing very well academically. It's not very supportable. So what do? I do the bare minimum, and I think it's Simon Simjek that, and I've seen this today, talking about, oh, how did he view it? Let me wrote it down. It is quiet quitting. I went,
Yeah.
it's amazing. Literally, if you're going to do the bare minimum and you're going to escape that, and I've done this between my coaching roles. I worked in secondary education for a little bit. Towards the end of my short career in that domain, I did exactly that. I'm going to do the bare minimum. You can't fire me. You can't sack me because I'm not actually doing anything bad. But am I somebody that's going above and beyond? Am I actually helping somebody else? No. So thus, I think there's a lot of people in society that are doing that because they've come to embrace probably my mother's generation as, hey, you go to work, you do a job. It doesn't matter if you like it or loathe it. Okay. But then that's not really a good existence.
There is a poem that I don't recall, is like the dying of the light. I think these days, people, the light they have inside of them, it slowly starts to die, and they just go through life, in relationships, jobs, and they just stay there. And not something, not easy for me to see, especially when it's, persons that I like friends, and you see that light is still there, and slowly the light is fading away, but they don't do anything. And as you mentioned, sometimes we just need a person, a moment, a decision to life totally change, like totally change. I recall one of the last journeys after a few years that I was on a plane, leaving the place I was living for many years. And the main thought of that journey was, I will never take so much time to take a decision. I prefer to have a wrong decision than pass 5, 4, I don't know, some people all lives to have that decision that I prefer to go wrong, just go back again and try to fix it, then just slowly just let the years goes by. I want to have a challenge. If I'm now thinking that you are only at 50, like I said, of your own life, James, I don't know you will get to say that, but if I would say that you are only at 50% of your potential, how will be if I met you in 5 years' time? What will be your impossible goal?
Impossible goal.
The thing that will switch the light on you.
I think for me, and this is an impossible goal right now, is to probably be in the same sphere as, say, Tony Robbins, because obviously he's got 30 years of experience in self-improvement and self-development. So for me to be par, ultimately this is subjective, because ultimately I think I'm better than him. Some people might say I'll never achieve it. I would say that I would be able to, if put in the same event as him, people would still come to watch me speak. So I would say that's probably an impossible goal right now. But that's when I talk about it, there is an internal backfire that kind of go, well, why not? Why not? As I watch his stuff more now than I probably did as an athlete, because I had another figure by the name of Eric Thomas, the hip hop preacher, was more alignment with who I was, it resonated with more. But I think now that I'm a bit older, there's more things that resonate with Tony Robbins because ultimately he's this big friendly giant. I've never gone to an event in person, but that's the aura that he gives off to me as like he should in theory be this guy that could literally probably crush my hand with his bare hand. But that would be my impossible goal, Nuno, is probably to be at an event that he's speaking at and I have the same amount of presence with people and the energy in the room is electric. How I'll get there, obviously only time will tell, but that seems the natural evolution for me as a coach is probably that is the next step to kind of go, instead of having impact on one person at a time, it's hundreds of people, if not thousands, in one venue at a time. And obviously that takes a lot of faith and belief to be able to do that. That you're going to be able to. It's not going to happen overnight. I'm not going to dispute that, because you're going to have people that buy into it to kind of go, okay, the first event might be 10 people, might be less,
Yes.
but then it will kind of go through word of mouth. Oh, James is doing something. I'm not going to say different, as in he bringing a different idea to what's already been created. Thus, oh, so that would be my impossible goal, to be on par with Tony Robbins. I know it's going to be quite
Yeah.
hard to do, but it excites me to try and see how close I could get.
I actually met both of them in like face to face, and they have like a level of energy. I'm pretty sure you are at the same level that them. Just the question of you start to give your small steps, and sometimes it's easy to reach an impossible goal, that's actually a possible goal, because no one is doing it. No one is going for the impossible goals. When we go, it's just a few of us that are going for that impossible goals, and once we decide that. Actually, I believe that it's more easy to reach an impossible goal than the normal goal that everyone wants and looking for. Is there anything that you want to just to finish up that to leave as a message to everyone here? Because I think at the end, the only message we need is a little bit a drop of hope in our daily life.
I think I'd echo that, Nuno, is the hope, the belief you have in yourself. And it starts, this is, oh, which one is it? It's for one of the military soldiers that's done SAS Who Dares Win. I can't remember which one it is. And Middleton. So literally, and considering this is a special forces person, you wouldn't think he would say something as stoic as this. But it needs to start from within and work the way outwards, not starting from outside. And I think this is where maybe the modern world has confused things, because we're seeking external validation from Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. Whereas if we did the work on ourselves, that's the only person that we should be looking for validation. And ultimately, validation is very, I would use the word subjective, because if I'm happy, I'm joyful, I'm pleasant, that's going to be at different levels depending on, circumstances on every given day. But I can control those. I'm not trying to seek out being happy, because ultimately it's an unachievable goal to be able to live by every day, because ultimately I'm trying to get to an imperfect emotion. Ultimately, joy, being pleasant, being loved. People that obviously care about you the most are going to exhibit that most of the time anyway. And if you can do that from within, that despite I'll say all the social media, their algorithms, this computer telling you what's right and what's wrong. Ultimately, if you can judge that for yourself as, hey, this brings me happiness, do more of that. It could be, going for a walk. It could be for somebody going to the gym. It could be for somebody watching a comedy show. That's going to make your life 1% better, 10% better, a lot better than it is right now, because you're bringing in things that bring you happiness. So what I've done, Nuno, myself, has kind of looked at, okay, what do you do when you're quote unquote happy? You listen to music. Okay. When you're not like that, what do you need to do? You need to do that anyway. So I've been praised for this when I was younger. I'm the life of the party. I'm the jokester. I make the whole room be in hysterics. Well, you need to do that more, because ultimately, if I make other people happy, I'm going to be happy myself. So I've literally done doing that myself to kind of go, okay, backwards engineering it for myself to kind of go, on the days that I don't feel 100% whatever happiness looks like, what can I do to reverse the tide? Okay. A lot of influence of music from my mom and dad is like Motown music. So very inspirational and things like that. Yeah. Listen to that. That probably brings me back to when I'm probably a toddler, to kind of
Yeah.
go, I can't probably understand the words, the meaning of I do now, because ultimately we talk about it from time to time as, hey, James, and it's not all uplifting. It's hard. There's some heartbreak stories. Yeah, but I'm going to use ain't no mountain high enough. Literally, that's
I love that
motivation.
music.
That's motivation right there. To no matter ain't no mountain high enough, ain't no valley low enough. Literally,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
the
James
emotion.
Gravy. It's Gravy or Gravy. His name, the singer.
I can't remember, but as in that's been in, movies that I've liked. It's been on video games that I've played. You're thinking, why do people not just do things that do? It's very easy to do a lot of
Yeah,
these things. To go for a walk, to listen to music. Obviously, music's going to make your mood change for the better. Because ultimately, some music is. I've listened to coaches that have said country music is very depressing. It's like, some of it is,
no,
but some of it is, it's only sad and somber because it's to do with like breakups and things like that. But it's telling a story. Whereas if you were to look at, I'm not going to even call it modern music that's in the charts, is it
yeah.
catchy? That's about it. Is there any meaning to it? Probably not. Being played on a
I
loop.
think it's like social media. They just show side of life, and life is more than that. I think old music has that thing that was showing all the sides, and I think actually that music is it it's the telling story that there is no mountain enough bigger that we cannot conquer,
Mm.
and that's it. And James, I can stay here talking for hours, and I love to be here, and I look forward to your success and to speak with you again. And so enjoy your life and have a nice day.
Thank you, Nuno. Thanks again for having me on.